Mario, ¿cómo estás?
Shavua Tov, everybody.
Hello.
Okay. Shavua Tov, everybody. Happy to see everybody. We are on Pasuk Beis, Shmuel Beis, Perek Chav Daled, Pasuk Beis. We introduced Perek Chav Daled, the sin of counting Klal Yisrael, that David was involved in that. So, and why, and what was the sin of Klal Yisrael that they had to suffer this. So Pasuk Beis gives us a little bit more of the narrative. Vayomer al Melech el Yoav Sarachai Lasherito. So the man that David HaMelech commands to do the census of course, is the chief of staff of the army, Yoav. Shutna is like fly, go and travel. To call Shivtei Yisrael, Midan v'ad Beersheba. Dan v'ad Beersheba always from the north to the south. Dan was up in the north, Beersheba is in the south. Ufigdu esam, right? The pokad is Lashon counting. Yadati et mispar ha'am. So I can know the census of the people. The Malbim and the Das Soifrim says that the count for David was important to know how many able-bodied military soldiers he had to be able to use if he had to go to war. Not only the count, Leiza tafkid roi kol echad ve'echad, says the Malbim. What were their skills? I have children who have made aliyah. Yaakov, my son, Daniel, is my grandson, one of my grandsons. So early on, they give them tests in school. Just like what in America, we took various tests. We were in 5th grade, 6th grade, the Iowa test, and it helps decide what the person's proclivities are. Are they good in math? Are they good in science? So in Israel, they're also they track from very little. The army, is he good in computer skills? Is he good? Is he a fighter? Is he strong? Does he have gymnastic skills? So it's the same thing. David HaMelech here is trying to find information about who is who. And that seems to imply that this was going to be like this was a personal count, that Yoav is going to have to meet individually with people to know exactly what their skills are. And that is one of the svaras, is why David thought it might be permitted to do this count without shkolim. Remember, last week we learned that there's a machlokas. Some say they use shkolim, but they were supposed to only count from 20 and above, but they counted from 13 and above. That was the chet. Other people said, no, they did not use shkolim. And that perhaps, well, they all knew, even from Cheder, you're not supposed to count individual Jews. How did David make this mistake? Because they thought that since they were doing a different type of count, not just the number, they wouldn't know everybody's proclivities if they were just doing a count. So the minyan was not just a count, which perhaps absolves. That's why they had a havamina, they had a thought that maybe you won't need shkolim. The Musar Nevi'im brings, why is it so important right now that David needs to know the count? So up until now, there's no standing army. Very interesting. If you go through the history of the Middle Ages, so it's the same thing in France and England in the 1400s, 1500s. When we read the various Shakespearean tragedies. Lord Northumberland, the king was a king, but there were many other. There was the Lord of York, and there was Northumberland. The knights, when they needed more, would come in, but there was no standing army. They would join with the king as needed. The beginning of the nation state, like Louis XIV in France and Henry VIII, you start seeing more national power because they start collecting taxes more and start building a standing army. So they have a standing army that's ready to go at any time. It's not that, oh, when they go into battle, the knights have to mobilize and join, and afterwards they all disperse and go back to their castles like it was in the feudal system. The beginning of the nation state in France and England. And so here, the Musar Navim sees the same thing happening in the time of David HaMelech, that David HaMelech is now assembling a standing army. They're also, when they had to go battle the Plishtim or Moab, that they would make an announcement and people would come to the Milchama. Like we saw by Shaul, when they went to battle. So they did a census, the Bezek, and they had 300,000 men, or they gave the sheep, and so he knew at that time what was in the army. But what triggered this now? Says the Musar Nevi'im, after the rebellion of Avshalom, and then immediately after the rebellion of Avshalom, you have Sheva ben Bichri. Right? We had another rebellion. That David doesn't have the heart of all the people, and that if he puts a call out to assemble the people for war, they're not going to respond. So now he is establishing a more permanent army, and that's why he's telling Yoav, let's find out the skill level, let's write them down in a Pinkas HaMelech, so we know who's available, who's not available. So very, very practical response here. Rav Sadia Gaon, the Me'am Loez brings this, that this is also, who's remaining loyal to David after the merit of Shalom? And 70,000, we'll see, 70,000 are going to die in this plague. And perhaps he says the ones who died are the ones that remained in opposition to him. Okay. Pasuk Gimel. Yoav fights back. Vayomer Yoav el HaMelech. V'yosef Hashem lokecha elaham kahem v'chahem me'apamim. What are you worried about? Says Yoav to him. Hashem is going to bless you, that there's going to have multiple people. You don't have to worry about how many Jews there are. Why are we doing this? Your eyes will see this. You, my king, remember, this is according to the Pshat, that Yoav was one of the heads of the Sanhedrin. Remember, we used the word Tach Kamoini, and one of the opinions was, who's Tach Kamoini? Yoav. Tach Kamoini from the Lashon of Chacham. So of course he knew the rule about not counting Klal Yisrael. And the fact that now you're going to count, we learned last week, Eina bracha shoroi ela hadavar samui min ha'ayin. Blessing exists in things that are not counted, that we don't see. That's why you never count. There's an ayin hara in it. The bracha is when we don't necessarily know the count. And Yoav says, you're going to be blessed. The minui is going to damage this blessing. Where do we see this concept of Eina bracha mitzuya el bedavar samui min ha'ayin? It says in Sefer Dvorim, Perek Chav Ches, Pasuk Ches, Yitzav Hashem itcha es habracha ba'asamecha. Now, asamecha also means like your silo, or where you're, but the word asamecha, is a planned word, samui min ayin, the same samech mem, something that is hidden from sight. And Rashi in Shmos Lamed says there's yesh ayin hara ala minyan, that when you count something, there's an evil eye put in it. So there's Yoav tainas to David. There's no need for this. And David asked him two things: the count, and what's everybody's skill level, and what can he do for the king. And Yoav responded on both of those. Number one, we don't need a count. There'll be an ayin hara with the count. And we don't need to know the details of each yachid v'yachid. We're going to see in a later pasuk. He says, "Kulam ladoni lavadim." All your people are servants to you, and they'll do whatever you ask them to do. The Medrash sees something special in what Yoav said here, when he said, Yosef Hashem Elokech kahem v'chahem mea pa'amim. Because by Moshe Rabbeinu also gave them a bracha. It said, Yosef Alechem kachem 1000 pa'amim. And Yoav said mea pa'amim, but he said kahem v'kahem, which is 10,000. So Birchas Shel Yoav was greater than the one of Yoav. Did someone want to say something? No. Pasuk Dalet. Let me just see if I didn't have something here.
Here you wrote something.
Ernie,
Yes.
what is the basis?
Yes.
What is the basis for like the ayin hara? I think it says somewhere else in Torah that like if something bad is happening, you should like not say it explicitly. It seems like language is like sort of hidden. It's not like outright. You don't, not to give an ayin hara, not to, if you're sick, you don't say that you
Well, saying
that's
al tiftach pela satan. That we don't want to give the satan an idea. That there's power to words. Those of us that are learning Nedarim and Nazir now, we see the power of the mouth. So, by the way, I was very moved in this morning's Haftorah. Yeshayahu sees the Malachim saying Kadosh, Kadosh. He says, what am I doing in this place? My mouth is tameh, and I come from a people whose mouths are tameh. So the Malach says, no, I'm going to touch your lips with a coal from the Mizbeach, and it purifies his lips. So you see, the Kedusha and everything of Klal Yisrael is in our mouth, that we don't use nivul peh, that we speak cleanly, and we don't say Lashon Hara. So what you say, Alan, is very important. Ayin hara is even more powerful. When you look at somebody, so we had Aser Sadibros, lo sachmod. You shouldn't covet. You can covet with your eyes, even if you don't say anything. So your eyes, lo sasuach reinechem. So just your eyes alone will do damage because you are not having the right. You're supposed to look at what somebody has with joy. That's the bracha that Hashem gave them. Each one of us is given what we're given. And if not, I'm just scratching the surface of ayin hara. But that's one of the reasons given as to why we don't count people. Or you shouldn't even count anything, your money, your children, whatever, because the bracha is samui min ayin. When people don't see things, that's when you'll have a bracha. Okay.
That's why the fish is the muzzle for
for Adar and that, because basically that you can't give the fish any iron horror because it's with under the ocean. Fish don't get the
Right. They say that those that accept the concept of Gilgulin Neshamois, so they make a point of eating fish on Shabbos, right? Mr. Englenoff would always tell me, Ochlim dag b'yom dag. Yom dag, Dalit Gimel, the seventh day on Shabbos, you eat fish. And we see by Rebbes, the first thing they bring them out is fish. And then they give shrine from the fish. Well, what's pshat fish on Shabbos? So that in those that hold that there's Gilgulei Neshamois, that tzaddikim come back as fish. Because fish, there's no ayin hara is shoylet by fish. And therefore, the final process is the tzaddik eats the fish and the neshama goes up because that's the final tikkun of the neshama. And that's what I've heard.
By the Mabel, the only living things besides Noach and the Teva were the fish in the ocean because I know them.
Right. And remember, fish don't close their eyes. They have an ayin tova all the time because they swim with their eyes open and the eyes are on the side, and it's the whole issue of why fish don't have ayin hara. Fish are built that way, even anatomically. Okay,
Interesting.
very good. What was that? No, so what was brought there is if a count is essential. So sometimes there'll be mitigation of what will happen if you count, but that the magefas occur when you do a count that's not needed. And the constant Yoav is timing to David. You don't need the count now. Yet pasuk Dalet, vayachzak dvar melech al Yoav. David is strong, and again tells Yoav, Val Sorya Chayil, that you must do it. Vayetze Yoav Yisrael Chalef Melech. Yoav and the officers go out, Lifkoret Amit Israel, to count Klal Yisrael. The
they didn't do machzit shekel at that time. They couldn't give a shekel or half a shekel or something. They didn't have that any.
No, so they had not machzit.
Maybe because there wasn't a basic mikdash. Maybe they didn't have.
No,
machzit shekel.
Yeah, but they had the Mishkan. They had the Mishkan. So there was.
So did they have for the Mishkan? Did they have machzit shekel?
They had machzit shekel, so they couldn't. That's one of the like what we learned last week. One of so some hold they did use a shekel, but even they used the shekel, they didn't count from 20 and above. They counted from 13 and above. And that even if you use the shekel, if it's a shekel shalol tzorech, that's also not correct. And then there were those that learned that he didn't use a shekel. Why didn't he use a shekel? We just learned tonight that maybe because since it wasn't just a physical count, but it was to determine what their qualities and capabilities were, he thought that you didn't need to use a shekel. Those are the to study him to learn, did he use a shekel, did he not use a shekel? If he used a shekel, it was not appropriate, because lo b'chayil v'lo b'koach ela beruchi. And he didn't need to count, that's what Yoav is telling him, that you have many people, and that the count was to inflate their ego. Like kings want to know, I have 1 million soldiers under arms.
Yeah, but I mean, David HaMelech was such a big Talmud Chochem. It's hard to understand this whole Mahalach. He was such a big Talmud Chochem. He knew all the halachas. He didn't need somebody else to tell him, hey, we're not allowed to do that. Obviously, I mean, and they had the Urim V'Tumim also at that time. They could have said if he wanted to go to war or whatever.
They're not going to war here. That's what Walter said. There was no tzorech for the count.
But
it's a precursor. Obviously, he thought he needs to know what his capabilities are for Klal Yisrael.
Right. So I gave some shot him like because it's after Merit of Shalom, and he lost faith in the people. Like before, they used to call the people, they would come. So these are the various answers given as to why David HaMelech did it.
I understand.
Yeah.
He wanted to track his population.
Yes, Barbara.
No, what you had just said, that his confidence was broken because of the rebellion. So he needed to really reaffirm his support. So it was really all, as you had just said, Ernie, that he
Right.
needed to reaffirm his confidence in the situation.
What could have been a more appropriate way for him to find out? Was there another avenue open to him to discover this information without using specifically the count? Should he have found another way to do this?
So let's see a machlokes between Rashi and the Ramban that's brought in Sefer Bamidbar, Pasuk Aleph, Perek Aleph, Pasuk Beis. What happens in the beginning of Parshas Bamidbar? Moshe Rabbeinu is told to do a census. So there Rashi says very clearly David sinned that he counted Klal Yisrael without the Machzis Shekel. So the Ramban says, he asks on Shitas Rashi, Yoav, who's not been given the command, also understood that it's Navera. So fine, David told him to count. So then why didn't Yoav count them with Shkolim? He would be going along with the Ritzon HaMelech, and there would be no Avera. So according to Rashi, that David sinned by counting without the Machzis HaShekel. Why didn't Yoav go ahead and use the Machzis HaShekel? There's be another kasha.
Yeah, the shekel.
It says in Sanhedrin, Mem Tes Amud Aleph,
They count each.
Kol ish asher yamred picha, v'lo yishmaz dvarech l'chol asher tzavenu yumad. Yachol afilu divrei Torah Talmud Omer rak chazak v'emaz. Harei kishemelech mitzav v'lavor divrei Torah asur lishmo b'kolom. If a melech tells somebody to do something that's going against the Torah, you're not allowed to listen to him. Just like your father, but if your father tells you to do something against the Torah, you're not supposed to listen to your father because you have a father in heaven. The Rambam paskins, so again we ask, that Yoav clearly knew was against the Torah. So the Ramban says, number one, Rashi says that the din of Machzis HaShekel was not necessarily Ladoros. It was given at the time in the Midbar. According to Ramban, Minyan Shalol Tzorach is not clear. It's not written in the Torah that it's Usr.
How about when they used shreds, sherets?
No, that was by Shaul HaMelech. By Shaul HaMelech, they used it.
But they used pottery with each person's name on it?
Yeah, that was by Shaul HaMelech.
So
By
Ernie,
Shaul HaMelech, he was told to count by Bezek. When they counted the 300,000 people that went to battle with Shaul. So there he counted with shards. So there was a machlokas and halacha between David and Yoav. And therefore Yoav was mechuyev to follow the melech, because with the machlokas, you have to follow the melech.
So Ernie, the Mayam always brings another possible answer to Walter's question. If you look back to Pasuk Beis, it says Shutna, go here and there, back and forth to count everyone within the land. Shutna, if you look at the letters, the main primary letters are Shin, Tet, and Nun. So Satan. So perhaps he's saying that the Satan took control of David's decision making, and even though he knew that he was not supposed to do that, that's what happened. And he brings a proof from Eov, where Hashem says to the Satan, "From where do you come?" And the Satan answers, "Mishut," from
flying around
in the earth. Yeah, so that's if there's no answer, David HaMelech knew how to learn, was very learned. So obviously there must have been an external force or an internal force that was causing him to not take the advice of Yoav. Yoav tried to detract him and get him not to to ask him to continue to count the census.
Let's
Maybe
remind, yeah, go
And
ahead.
that's
Maybe
getting
he had
into
a senior
apologetics.
moment.
You can't. I mean, it's a nice on. I mean, it's saying it, but
Right, it's a little mystical.
yeah,
Let's remember,
So-
last week we went at length that the Magefa is going to happen to Klal Yisrael. That really Klal Yisrael sinned by not requesting the Binyan Beis HaMikdash. We went through it at length last week. That this is all by Yoses David. David is being that sort of fits what Bernie tried to say now about the Satan. David did this because, in fact, Klal Yisrael was deserving of punishment because they were not oisek and binyan beis habechira. That's we discussed some of those shittas last week, and we'll see a little bit more of it this week as well. Okay, so Bernie sent out a picture to the Navi group. I assume he sent it to everybody about Eov's travels, which are now told. I'm sorry, Yoav's travels. Eov and Yoav, the same words. He mentioned Eov. So Vayavru et Yarden. So first they crossed the Jordan. Vayachanu ba'ar er. Yemina yer shebetoch hanachal agad val yazeh.
must never be by you.
So they went to the Avra Yarden first.
I didn't see it.
Vayavo Gilad v'ler tachtim chodshi. Vayavo Dana Yan v'saviv el Pizah. He went up north to Sidon, which is in Lebanon. Vayavo Mivtzar Tzor v'chol harechi v'aknani. Vayetzu Negev Yuda Beersheba. They made it all the way down south to Beersheba. Vayashutu b'chol haaretz. They traveled throughout the land. Vayavo miktzet tisha chadashim v'esrim yom Yerushalayim. 9 months, 20 days, they make it to Yerushalayim. By the way, the
It
Medrash
took them
said-
9 months to travel the land.
so the Medrash says Yoav tried to
Stall it.
stall the minion. So first he went to the Bnei Gad, right? They lived on the Avra Yarden. Remember, Moshe Rabbeinu is buried in the Shetach of Gad, and they were very strong Giborim. He was hoping that they would fight him and prevent him from carrying out his duty. And they'll throw stones at me, but it didn't happen. Or by starting off in Ava Yarden, it's a roundabout way. And by stalling, maybe David HaMelech will regret doing the mimili. And then the Medrash says he went to Dan, because Dan, remember Pesel Micha, the Bnei Dan worshipped Avodah Zarah, that and that he would be delayed because Hashem will be upset. He won't allow him to continue. But again, all of these mechanisms didn't work. Pasuk Tes, Vayitein Yoav et mispar mifkad ha'am lamelech. Yoav gives the census to the Melech. Vatihi Yisrael, 800,000 ish chayil sholev charev. 800,000 soldiers capable of sword play. The ish Yudah 500,000 ish. And the tribe of Judah alone is 500,000. So it's plus 800,000 plus 500,000, 1.3 million man army. So Rashi brings in Midbar Rabbah by Parshas Bamidbar, you notice two words: Vayitein Yoav et mispar mifkad ha'am. I mean, mispar and mifkad are the same words. Count. What's this double language? Break the Medrash. In mispar lama mifkad. The mifkad lama mispar. He had Yoav had a plan. He had like a small number, which is not really the correct one. And eventually, David didn't accept. You have to show him the bigger one. Because again, he wanted to avoid the chet of mispar. Now, according to Ramban, who says they did count with shkolim, the miskar mifkad am, because they knew the mispar by the pekida of the Machzis HaShekel. That's the double language. Because we see there's a machlokas, Rashi and Ramban, whether he counted with shkolim or whether he didn't. According to Ramban, he did count with shkolim. Now, we're not going to spend too much time on it, but we've been learning all along that Divrei Hayamim has a lot of parallel prokim to the prokim we've learned here. There, the count is different. There it says, Vayicho Yisrael elef alofim umea elef ish sholev cherv Yehuda. So there's 300,000 more of Israelites. The Yehuda arba meot v'shivim elef, and the tribe of Judah is only 470,000. So how are you miyashev this difference between Divrei Yomim and the one in Shmuel? So again, the Medrash in the name of Rabbi Yeshua says, Moisifin kan mashachistrim kan. It's not a kasha. Here, they added what was left out there. Levi u'Binyamin lo pokad b'soicham. That in Divrei Yomim it says Levi and Binyamin were not counted. And Yoav did that on purpose to sort of sabotage the count. You're not counting everybody. You haven't violated the prohibition. And he had a ready excuse, says the Medrash. Amar Yoav, Im Yomar Li, if David HaMelech says to me, Lama sofarta otam? Why didn't you count Shevet Levi? Amar La Moshe Rabbeinu lo siper otam. Like it says, Achas Matei Levi lo tifkod. He says, if Moshe didn't count him, how can I count him? And why didn't he count Binyamin? He could tell David, Esmol halach mehem kama lafim b'pelegesh kiva. I mean, they lost through the civil war that we learned about in the end of Sefer Shoftim by Pelegesh Kiva. What am I counting them for? They've lost already thousands of people. Dover Acher, Levi, Shimshon Shakadosh Baruch Hu. Levi are the servants of Hakadosh Baruch Hu. Binyamin Balach Sanya Shalom. The base of Mikdash is built on the territory of Binyamin, right? Vani Moinosam. Lefichach Levi Binyamin lo pakad. Hainu, the meaning that Apostle Khan who poiches mishum de lo mana shevet Levi Binyamin Yemoim. That's one approach. There's others, but I don't think we have to go into all of them. Now, the Radak explains why in Divrei Yomim there's 30,000 less people in Yehuda. After Shoysim Shoshim Elef Elu Mesu b'Magefa Kishivim Elef Hayo Amesu Magefa Shoshim Elef b'Mayu Yehuda Umesu Kokach Midol Fishu Shifter Shel David Buaya Siba Ba'osu Shevet Rav Achoitim. That means since David is the one that is the cause of the Siba, the majority of the deaths came from Shevet Yehuda. It's 30,000 less because in the Magefa that we're going to see happens, it was from most of them was from Shevet Yehuda. Right, we spoke about the Musra Nevi'im, the standing army business. Okay, Pasuk Yud. Vayach leiv David oso. David all of a sudden had pangs of regret. He had a heartache. After he counted the people. Vayomer David el Hashem. Chatatzi ma'od asher asisi. I recognize that I sinned greatly. Ve'ata Hashem, now my God, haver na es avon avdecha ki niskalti ma'od. I acted foolishly. Please forgive me for my sin. Now, as we've learned today, the count took 10 months. Yet, during that period of time, it's only after the count was over and he was given the number, only then did he have this concept of doing shuvah. So here, the Meforshim explain that it said that David was incited, that it's a punishment both for David and for Yisrael. Number one, Hashem removed from David the siyata d'shmaya that he shouldn't sin. Without the siyata d'shmaya, David sinned. So that's the hasata, the incitement of David ended here. So now the siyata d'shmaya came back, and then he felt the chet, and he regretted, and he asked Hashem to be moichelim, which again shows the godless of David. Immediately he recognized the sin. He said chatasi ma'od, without nobody telling him any tirutzim, what he did. He knew right away that he didn't matzdik himself. However, so Vayakom David baboker, Var Hashem haya el God Navi choyze David lemor. Hashem commands God the Navi, right? Vayomer David el God, to go and speak to David HaMelech. Haloch v'dibar tel David. This is the words of Hashem to God. Ko amar Hashem, shalosh anochi notel alecha. I can give you 3 punishments. You choose which punishment you want. Vayavo Gad el David vayagid lo. God goes to David and tells him, Vayomer lo, he says, Hatavo lecha sheva shanim rav. One choice, 7 years of famine. Be'artzecha. Im shlosha chadoshim nesuch lifnei tzarecha v'hu rodfecha. You could be chased by enemies for 3 months, or the final third, im heyot shloshet yamim dever bartzecha. You can have a plague, an illness, 3 days. Atadau re'ei ma ashiv sholchi davar. How shall I respond? So we have 3 punishments: Rav, hunger; Cherev, the sword of the enemy; the dever, a medical plague.
What is the concept of removing the siyata d'shmaya from David?
We learned last week that tzaddikim have a siyat, that we all have a nature to follow our Yetzer Ra. That's human nature. And it's without Hashem helping us, we can't fight it. And tzaddikim get great siyata d'shmaya helping them fight the Yetzer Hara and the evil inclination. So the hasata to David was the removal of the siyata d'shmaya, which allowed him to sin.
It says, David said, "Nafshi cholol bekirbi." I killed the Yetzer Hara.
So that may have just been rhetorical. It may have been rhetorical because you see that the way the Meforshim learn, the Yetzer Hara existed. It's just he had the ability to fight it through siyata d'shmaya.
So when we daven every day, we're looking that Hashem, but like that we should be infused with that siyata d'shmaya.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Among the other things we should daven for.
Well, it says, keep the Yetzer Hara away from us, in front of us, and keep them away from behind us. Mariv, what is it?
There's a prayer you say after Shabbos, Ribon HaOlamim. It talks about all the sharei, whatever you should ask for. One of them is Siyata d'shmaya. I don't know if you ever seen that prayer.
Right. Siyata d'shmaya is very important in everything that we do. Now, the Iyah Hayam brings a Gemara. Those in the Daf Yomi will remember this Gemara. from Brachos Yud. I'll read the Gemara. Hanu bir Yoini. The Havu b'Shivavosad Rav Meir. There was like a mafia guy who lived in the neighborhood of Rav Meir. Vavu Kamatzara Leituva. He gave him a lot of tzoros. Havu Kaboy Rav Meir Rachmi Aloi Ki Echad Elimusu. Rav Meir was davening that he should die. Amrele Bruria Dvisu. Right? Rav Meir was married to the famous Bruria, his wife. My daitcha. What are you davening for his death? Mishum dechsiv yitamu chatoim. It says yitamu chatoim in Aretz. Miksiv choitim. Chatoim doesn't say the sinners should be destroyed from the world. It says sin should be destroyed from the world. Va'od shpil l'sefer dikra. Go to the end of the pasuk. It says urushaim odenam halalukan. Even the Yitamu Chatoim or Rishoim Odeinam? What, just because the sins go away, Rishoim go away? Ella, boy, Rachme Alai Del Harav is a tshuva. Bruria told Reb Meir, her husband, you should daven for this guy to be about tshuva. Boy, Rachme Alai, v'chazru b'tshuva. And Reb Meir did that. He davened for him, and they were chazru b'tshuva. Im Cain says the Yam. Yeshloimer the high tiny kneged David. Shlo yispalo sheyachzer Shoel b'tshuva. How come David never davened that Shaul Hamelech should be chozer b'tshuva? Oh, she's trapping Mechalyon. We know that Shaul became depressed, mentally ill. Why didn't David daven that he should be healed from that? Shahaya lo machmas ruach ra. The lawyer royally yispalo sheyamus. Now, is such a sin bad enough that because of that, Klal Yisrael is going to be killed in a Magefa? With these three sins? So, the Minchas Yehuda says like this, Sibas Shloisha ha'onshim, God just delivered three possibilities. Rav, Cherev, Dever. These are all Shloisha Pishei Yisrael. The Bnei Yisrael nitztavu al shloisha mitzvahs b'voam el Eretz Yisrael. The Bnei Yisrael were commanded to do three mitzvahs when they came in. Mechias Amalek, l'malos choiser shmo gadol, to wipe out Amalek, like it says, ki yad al keis ko milchama l'Hashem b'Amalek midor dor. Hashem's name is deficient, and until we wipe out Amalek, Hashem's name will remain deficient. Minias melech Lanos Yisrael uluchvoidam, uvinyan beis hamikdash l'shichta b'mach ve'im pashul b'shlosha. They did it. They did things for their own benefit. They didn't do things for kavod HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They did, and especially they didn't wipe out Amalek properly. They didn't do the binyan hamikdash like we said. However, the Metzudas David learns that the Iker Oynish, this Magefa, came because of the Minyan Bnei Israel. Because Minyan leads to Magefa. It says, V'lo yeh b'hem negef bifkodosam. That if you count, you'll have a Magefa. Now, why did Hashem give David HaMelech a choice? Since David immediately made tshuva, this tshuva lightened the punishment on Klal Yisrael. Vayomer, so says, look at the next pasuk, Yudalit. A pasuk very familiar to all of us who daven every day. Vayomer David el Gad, Tsar li me'od, niplana biyad Hashem ki rabim rachamav, uviyad adam alapola. He says, I'm greatly pained. Please let us fall into the hands of Hashem. Meaning, Ra'av, famine, is alleviated by wealthy people giving money. But then, so other people can eat. But then you rely on human beings. The second cherev is the enemy coming, that's a human being. David is asking for the dever, for the plague. because that comes miyad Hashem. And Hashem has Rabim Rachma, and rather Uviyad Adam ale pola. And please do not allow me to fall into human hands. That's what basically David's cheshbon was. Rav and Cherev are biyad Adam, and the dever is all from HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
So the Bnei Yisrael were not innocent in this. If they were going to be killed, they also share some of the blame.
They do. Like we talked about, the main blame we saw that the Meforshim said was that they did not oisik themselves in the building of the Binyan Beis HaMikdash. So the Musar on Nevi'im asks, I'd rather fall in the hands of Hashem. Fine, I understand the sword. That's by human hands. It's also Hashem opens up rain, right, and all of that. No, they bring the same answer that the EM said, that they go to wealthy people, and you still, in order to be fed, and they'll also not, you're relying on humans and not on Kodesh Baruch Hu's Rachmi. Says the Rashi and the Radak in the name of Chazal from the Medrash Shmuel. Nischashev David fnei atzmo v'omer im borani cherev achshav you call Yisrael omer ma'achbis olav anishai. It's like David HaMelech has left us to the enemy, or hu batuach al gvurav. He thinks through his gevura he's going to protect us. So that's not a good choice. Im bor ani rav achshav you call Yisrael omer ma'achbis olav anishai hu batuach al atrosav. And David HaMelech has a huge palace with huge storehouses. So he's going to make it through the Rav. What about us? So Dever HaKol Shavin Bo. And that's how the Medrash Shmuel learns. Then it says, Yesh Noagim Lomar Pasuk Ze Kodim Tachanun Shel Rachum V'Chanun. There's a minhag that we say this Pasuk before Tachanun. Yesh Sheina Moimir Moso. Some of the minhag not to say Vayomer David al God, because this obviously has been said by punishment, and we don't want to mention punishment by Tachnun. Ma'aser Rav, which says over the various minhagim of the Gra, by Tachnun lo Yomer Pasuk Vayomer David. Shenemar Gabi Paronis Rak Yatchil Rachum Achanun. The Aruch HaShulchan also brings the minhag Shalolo Amro, and Frankfurt the Main, it brings here that the minhag in Frankfurt the Main was not to say it. However, the Chidah says if a person falls on his arm and not say it, there's a sakana. So we say the sakana, we say the pasuk to prevent from any sakana when we fall on our arm. Pasuk Tesvav. Vayiten Hashem dever b'Yisrael ma'aboker vad es moed. We'll see what time frame this plague left for. It sounds from the morning until the es moed. Vayames b'na'am idan vad Beersheva shivim elafish. 70,000 people died in this period of time. Now, what is this time? This is from the boker that God came to David immediately in the morning. And immediately David chose Dever. So some say ad eis osamoy, that's to the next 24-hour period, from one morning to the other morning. Yonasan ben Uziah learns, Me'iden de misnachis tmida. It's from me'es de nishchat korban atomid ad mitzik ad shenikra, until it was offered. That means every morning they shechted the korban tamid, and then an hour later, very, very short time later, they did the zrikas of the blood. It says in Brachos, Daf Samach Beis Omid Beis, my Eis Moed. What does it mean, Eis Moed? Omer Shmuel Sabach Chassid Rav Chanina Mishmei Rav Chanina. Misha Shchitas Atomid Ad Shaz Zrikaso. That's where the Yonis of Israel got it. From the time that they shechted the tamid until they did the zrikas adam. Rabbi Yochanan ad chatzois, until noontime. Others say, whatever you want to say, these 70,000 died in a very short period of time. They calculate, the Malbim calculated that according to the opinion that it was from the shechita of the tamid until the zrika, in a one day would have died 1,680,000 people.
Were they Rishonim? Why those thousands of people? I mean, it was,
So we brought before a shita that it was those that remained loyal to Avshalom that hadn't been killed in the battles with Avshalom.
Well, we saw how COVID, what that could do in a short period of time. It's not that hard to believe that in a short period of time, many people could die.
What was the example, Ellen, you brought? COVID.
Like COVID.
Right. Well, COVID was a magefa too. So I'm going to read what the Iyeh Hayam brings. It asks all the questions that everybody's been asking tonight. B'chol parsha zu kasha. Eza aveira also Yisrael. She is chayvu oynesh achi gadol. What aveira did they do that we see 70,000 in a period, but it could have been millions over a longer period? He says, Matzinu ke'ein zeh b'Megillas Esther. She'amru Chazal. Mipnei manis chayvu anshe oisei dor klaya. Haman wanted to destroy all the Jewish people of that generation. Amru mishum shenenu mesudas Achashverosh. Chazal answered, they were invited to the Achashverosh's party, and they had a good time at the party. There was also the same kasha. Eza vera chamura. Also, she's chayvu onish gadol kolkach. So there, the Iyeh Hayam and Megillas Esther, it wasn't just alavera she'asu. Since they were nanu mesudas Achashverosh, v'nisarvu al yidei chenim agoyim, it's assimilation. They enjoyed mixing with the Eina Yehudim. Su lo yeshar Yisrael kiyum kishadorim begalus ben agoyim. Remember, Bnei Yisrael had just been exiled by the Babylonians. This is within 50, 60 years. And now the Jewish people are going to have to learn how to live in Golus. So at the earliest time, the Jewish people had to be taught a lesson. This was a danger for the rest of the thousands of years of the existence of Klal Yisrael in the Golus. Nasan lehem onesh achi gadol kidei lazkiram ulo'oram shlo yamshichu banagasu. The Yifreshu min hagoyim, the main lesson was that Jews need to stay in general with themselves. V'chein yisod chag hapurim lahazkir Yisrael davar zeh. So says he, Ken yesh lomar b'inyanenu. He called Elu advarim enem rak oinshim laveru shasu Yisrael mishabar le'et Yisrael. It's not just the averis that they did from coming into Israel. Ela k'shevir kodesh baruch et Yisrael le'et Yisrael ratzah mehem eze derech b'hanhagat chayehem u'v'hanhagat malchutam. Hashem wanted to see in Klal Yisrael a certain behavior and a certain government. V'hu sheyeh avodat Hashem merkaz hachayim. Service of God should be the central part of their lives. V'chol shara pratim tfeilim. Everything else is secondary. Lefichach Amar Ramban, Shayach chet shelo bikshu binyan beis hamikdash. What does the Ramban really mean when he says that they didn't occupy themselves in the binyan beis hamikdash? Ki zeh siman shelo hazeh bechavetzam liyot karov yoter l'Hashem. What is your innermost desire? Dveikus in God? Do you want, is your whole aspiration to become closer to Hashem? The Gam Kan, Chata Shel Mini Yisrael, Lo hayastam she'avar Isur Shel Mini Yisrael. It wasn't the fact that there's an Aveira to count and they were over the Aveira. Ela sheheru bezeh, shashkafatam hayta shekol kocham b'molchama haya al pi minyan hatzovim. That their concept was, oh, we're going to have 1 million men. Our power is because we have a strong army. V'lo samu el libam she'Hashem hu Eloheim lahem. V'im kein b'zeh hazman shayak karov l'malchut Shlomo shu aviv shel Mashiach v'hu yivneh Beit HaMikdash shehu atchalat amim har yikrau. We're about to start a new era. Shlomo HaMelech, bin Beis HaMikdash, the father of Mashiach. V'yetzarich lifol kiddush Hashem u'pirsim shma gadol ba'olam. Kol zeh lo yesh shayach ibnei Yisrael atzmam lo yichyu chayehem b'ashkafa nechona shavodat Hashem hu ha'ikar v'hakol tafelo. That for the Jewish people, the service to Hashem is what's primary, everything else is secondary. Lefichach hevi HaKadosh Baruch Hu oynesh hachi gadol kedei lo aram l'tshuva. This was brought at this period of time to bring them to become Bal Tshuva. V'chein hayeh l'maaseh she'yitzpalu el Hashem v'yasu tshuva. This onesh was constricted, and they always remembered this magefa, and therefore they always remembered that the derech hayashar is to understand that our purpose here is for avodas Hashem. I think that's a nice conclusion to what we've been talking about tonight. That the EIM gives us a nice hashkafa into what happened here. And Mirz Hashem next week. We'll finish the perek. We have a lot more to do. David HaMelech is going to purchase the Mokum HaMikdash, and that's why it's called Beis David in many sources. We'll go through that whole Aravna Yevusi, and then Mirz Hashem next week we'll probably finish the Sefer. Any comments, questions, ha'aros?
Ernie, it's just difficult to understand. Sorry. And it's just difficult to understand cause and effect on everything, because once you start with Purim, they say it's cause and effect. Yeah, it's cause and effect because they didn't ask for the Beis Hamikdash. I don't want to say, when we talk about the Shoah, so these things are big things. I'm not sure if we understand. I mean, we can think about reasons, but it's very hard to see cause and effect on things. Counting 1 million, you understand, because we were told not to do that. That's for sure. This I understand, but the other thing about Purim, it's a difficult thing to understand, and that to compare it to this.
I think his comparison was that it was to teach them a lesson. They're going to live in Golus now for thousands of years.
Ernie, all those
so he
things
said
happening.
That's why he gives an explanation for because they went to a Suda. Why would they be punished so severely? You have to.
He
tries to give a shot because there also it seems that the punishment was greater than the sin, and that's why he tries to deal with here as well. What sin did they do? So he tries to say that it's a hashkafas achayim. That prior to Shlomo HaMelech, when they're about to build the Binyan Beis HaMikdash, so he wanted to rejigger them. It didn't work. We see what happened after they built the Beis HaMikdash. They didn't do what Hashem wanted them to do in the end. But he tried. No one's saying anything about the Shoah. Chas v'shalom. I didn't say anything about the Shoah. You're saying once you open up Pandora's box.
Right. I'm not saying anything about that. I'm just saying it's just hard when
it's hard. But that's why I read. That's why
Josh's of cause and effect. It just makes it very hard. We don't know why HaKadosh Baruch Hu does things. It's like
I know, but that's what our sheer is to attempt to hear what the Meforshim say about it. We can, and we grapple with it. We accept it, we not accept it, and Hanami. That's the idea.
Um,